All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Orange County Partnership Governance Committee meeting today, June 16th at 3:30 p.m. at 40 Matthew Street in Goshen. This is a public meeting, and it is being live streamed. Notice this meeting was published in accordance with the New York State Open Meetings Law. With respect to roll call, we have present Sandy Mathis, Kurt Kaler, Mary Beth Bianconi. Ryan is unable to join us today, but we do have a quorum of the governance committee. We also have the record reflect that Cassie Garcia and Connor Eckert are with us. So with that dispense, that's our call to order and roll call. New business, we're going to discuss a bit here today the slate of candidates for board consideration. So a couple of notes. We have presently, I believe, a board of 9, if I am correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. We can have a board in accordance with our bylaws of up to 15. We are in the process of contemplating, the board's makeup in terms of ensuring that we're accurately representing the interests, the economic development, and housing and quality of life interests and municipal interests and things like that across the broadly across the county. We have had a couple people express interest in being on the board. We're not at a point yet as a committee where we can entertain candidates at this point, but we did want to talk, I think, about a couple of topics. One of them being, folks will recall, we adopted our bylaws back in May of 2025. This was amended and restated, and I believe this might even be the second version of amended and restated, and this largely reflected modifications to our bylaws when we became a public authority. So we wanted our bylaws to more accurately align with our operations as a public authority, and then also to reflect our actual operating processes that we have. So one thing that we should note is under Article 4, in terms of directors, the governance committee shall provide the board of directors with a slate of qualified candidates. When seats are open, such candidates will be presented to the board immediately prior to the annual meeting, which is at the end of the year. And individuals who hold any elected or appointed federal, state, county, or local municipal government officer position with any office or agency or instrumentality thereof shall be ineligible to be a candidate of the board of directors. So I read that intentionally because A, it outlines our nominating process, but B, it also is a topic for discussion. I think when we wrote this, I know when we wrote this because I was involved in it, our concept was that we are a public authority, we are a mission-driven nonprofit that is focused on economic development activities in Orange County. By being focused on economic development opportunities in Orange County, necessarily there are going to be intersections with elected and appointed officials. We wanted to make sure in our statement that we were not creating any inherent conflicts of interest between board members and development projects that may be occurring in our communities, right? So for instance, a local elected leader, someone on a county level, a town, a mayor, city, village, those kinds of things. I think planning board, folks who are appointed officials, they're not elected, they're appointed. Zoning board of appeals, same kind of thing. All of that said, I think we remain committed to avoiding these inherent conflicts of interest. However, one of the things that has come up as we have been considering potential candidates for the board is that we may need to sharpen our language so that we are not being overbroad and excluding people whose representation on the board may bring a tremendous amount of value and for which there is essentially the same level of potential conflict of interest with any other board member. Yeah. If you follow what I'm saying, right? All of us have the potential to have a conflict of interest and we're required to disclose it. So there's never a zero conflict of interest board member, but there certainly are some folks who are most likely to be in a conflict, right? Those who are funding, undertaking, or approving projects. So we could think of our local elected officials, appointed planning board members, those kinds of things. Versus we've discovered that there are a number of people functioning more broadly in our community who may be appointed officials but who don't have direct, say, fiduciary responsibility over things related to economic development. So I guess one of the considerations is modifying our language to make sure that we're not unnecessarily excluding people, and the example I would give would be, for instance, people who are in higher education.
Yep.
So we have a number of opportunities where we have folks who are engaged in higher education within the Orange County, whether it's directly in Orange County or kind of working in the arena in Orange County, who may be appointed officials, but they're in higher education. They're not making economic development decisions directly. They're not controlling funding undertaken and approving. They're but yet they're an incredibly important partner, potential partner to the partnership. With that, I'm going to stop talking and let my fellow committee members and/or Connor chime in. But that was really what I wanted to talk about with respect to. I had 2 topics. One was, well, really 3. One was we are not required to have 15 board members. We can have any number, no less than 5, up to 15. I do think that we are looking to make sure that the board is representative and is providing good input and reach for Connor and the staff. So we are interested in considering other board members, and then in having those discussions, we've determined that our language may be overbroad with respect to who we're excluding unintentionally.
Right, and I think, even looking back when we were building this policy, it's broad in the sense I think it encompasses, it diverts from the intention of the clause itself. So I wonder administratively whether it's amending the bylaws, or, and I can ask our council this, making an interpretation as a committee and a board based on the intent of the policy, which maybe is a quicker way, maybe cleaner way to get what we want here. But there could be 2 maybe procedural paths we can take. I think bylaws, there's probably a couple of gates that has to come out of this committee, and then supermajority of the board required, whereas interpretation, I guess, is a similar process, but I think it's 2 ways we could go.
Mm-hmm.
But there is talent out there. I mean, what we do is evolving, right? It's not just contractors and developers, but it's folks in the energy space, it's workforce and talent, which is dominating everything we do now. So having representation from the education sector is important about the organization.
By tightening up the language, is that what we're suggesting here?
Particularly that one clause on appointed officials. Because some folks, whether it's BOCES or a college, are appointed officials in the public sector, not elected. And as Mayor Beth said, not having any decision-making capacity on land use decisions or funding decisions, but critical to what we do every day.
And even if they have to disclose that on our ethics filings, we would still have to do this adjustment.
I think right now our language is pretty exclusionary, so I think we either, as Connor says, we either have to do some kind of an interpretation, which I'm not sure honestly how that works, or we need to add additional language to our bylaws to clarify what we say when we mean no appointed officials. Because again, as Connor says, there's positions in secondary education, in higher education, workforce development, and other places where we've discovered there are appointed officials, which sometimes was surprising. People who were appointed officials that I did not realize that they were appointed officials. And our language says, appointed federal, state, county, or local municipal government office or position with any office or agency or instrumentality thereof, which is pretty broad.
I'd rather just clean up the language and not get into the interpretation stuff. I think if we were just to exclude elected and or appointed officials involved with project approval, that direct conflict, project or municipal rules or any of that, I would just remind you, Connor, because you may, as we continue, have the need for an expertise that might be in that conflict area. Say you wanted to have a group to discuss local approvals. streamlining suggestions, how can we do that? You could appoint a task force to do that, or a subcommittee, you know, you can appoint a group with a very specific task that is not on the board that will not be covered by that.
It's true.
You know, as you go and look at ways to make processes easier, however you want to look at that, I think, you know, you'd want people when they're deeply in that process that can at least make us all aware of where we may think it's more simplistic to make it easier. If we're missing something, you want people that actually live that process. But I'd rather clean the language up, be very clear on those two areas, and keep it open. But then I would say I would love to hear from you what skills and experience would bring the most value to you on this board. You know, I think you have energy covered.
Yeah,
You certainly have accounting covered.
professional
You have brilliant young business people covered
Sure.
by Peckham and Kurt.
I
You know,
see.
Mary Beth with business, infrastructure, me with nothing. You know, I'm just the old guy you're looking to kick off, which is cool. But really think about, because you want people you can go to get advice, right, and help.
Yeah.
You know, I think we have covered energy, but you know, you just, environmental maybe, there's a lot of areas that have some expertise, of course, you want them to be pro the mission first, right? You don't wanna cause conflict, but any skills that can help. So I'd love to hear when you really think about that, unless you already have, of what
Housing
skills you're
sector,
looking for.
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
And I don't think we could
mean,
discount sustainability and climate as
No,
well. It's
that's a great
dominant,
point,
you
great
know,
point.
Talent,
Absolutely.
housing, climate, sustainability.
You know, it
Urban
reflects the
planning,
constituency in the county, where's those opinions moving to? Be more in the tune of that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at right now, and you guys probably know this, right, but in order, a lot of New York State's funding that's tied to everything, you have to be a pro-housing community to get it.
Yep.
So the housing space is creeping into everything, but it makes sense. If people don't know where to live, there isn't gonna be an economy. So I think there's some broad areas that we should be looking at. So I guess what I'd like to suggest from here is we do a couple of things. One is perhaps, Connor, we could task you with working with Millen on some revised language under an article under item 2, nomination of directors with respect to that exclusion. And I, you know, again, I think our intent in creating it was clear, but I think we perhaps were overbroad in
Great.
the construction. So, and obviously I'm more than available to talk with Millen and you if you like. Then I think Sandy rightly kind of gave you a homework assignment, which is, and I had created sort of a matrix previously, I'll recirculate that, of like, you know, board member skill sets to think about. But in terms of, you know, if rounding out the board to get different perspectives and those kinds of things, those sectors. And then what we may want to do is, I think our next governance committee meeting is later this year, Kathy, yes?
Yes, I think, it might be
September.
September.
And fall.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if we wanna, you know, get our homework assignments done, right? So that when we look at that September meeting, you know, we may be in a position to, recommend the bylaw modification. We may even at that point have some candidates that we may have done some candidate screening on,
Sure.
that we can have a more detailed conversation about, because then we have to do, our slate of directors would be due 30 days before our final meeting in the year. So that will give us some time.
Yep. That sounds good to me.
Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Can we, is it, because I think we need some clarity, unless you're confident, Connor, that it was done with the last round. I just remember an interesting way members were added to the board. The chair had a special appointment, and I'd like to just clean that up and assign terms. I don't know if we have terms.
We do.
We do.
Okay, so
Yes.
we could just make sure that's clean.
Yeah, we do. And I think that the best, you know, the opportunity here is You know, these are still relatively new bylaws, so I think
Yeah,
as we continue
yeah.
through, if we need to right-size it,
Yeah.
we can do
Yes.
that,
Mhm.
you know? But yeah, we have terms, we've got, I think, more of a process now,
We do.
an interview process, a criteria to review, but point well taken.
And I would
So,
encourage
so-
members, if it should be in your packet, and if it's not, we certainly will get it to you, to review the bylaws, but yes, that same section 4 on directors, covers management of the corporation, nomination of directors, election and term of directors, emeritus, number of directors, vacancies, removal, resignation, quorum, actions of the board meetings. It just kind of is the whole, like, how does the board function? So I would encourage everyone to review that as well. If you see anything that we need to modify,
Well, the beauty of this list I was just seeing for the first time shows me being the first one with an expiring term. How convenient is that? So that's perfect. So, let me look at the bylaws and stuff. If I have any follow-up questions, I need to burden the board with it. But let me just get a better understanding how that process then works, because I would think there needs to be a nominating process in the fall.
yes.
And then whatever, but I'll look at
And
that.
I think Cassie, you and I just kind of stepped through the timing of how that process would work when we constructed the calendar.
Yes.
So, it might make sense also I was actually looking for the calendar and I couldn't find it.
Okay.
Can you recirculate the calendar meetings to the board, please?
Yes.
And I'm sure it's out there somewhere, I just couldn't find it. That's probably a me thing, not necessarily an everybody else thing. But the timing of meetings of things like audit and finance and of nominating and governance was set up so that we aligned with those various
Yes.
board actions, including things like Paris reporting and requirements for our end of the year meeting and those kinds of things.
Sounds good.
Right. So that was sort of our new old business. I do not believe, from my perspective, I don't believe we have anything to discuss in executive session. Does anyone on the committee believe we need an executive session?
No.
That's fine, all right. If not necessary, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Wonderful, thank you, governance committee.